Welcome to One Angry Black Republican podcast where morality checks extremism. I'm your host, B, and this is episode 7 of season 2. And being that it's the month of poetry, National Poetry Month, I've been working on a haiku series, which I'm entitling the George Floyd series, through the month of April. So you can check me out on Facebook. I have a, post every morning, haiku poem this month dedicated to, George Floyd. This is a moment in American history, that'll be reflected upon for centuries to come, considering America makes it that long, with the divide in the country that we're all experiencing right now. That is a conundrum, to say the least, that America will make it a couple of hundred more centuries. But this particular moment in history is defining on so many different levels, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of the George Floyd trial in this particular podcast, but I will be discussing this reality that all of us are in the middle of facing right now, with the George Floyd trial having been underway now for nearly 4 days. And, some interesting developments throughout these first few days. Namely, I think back to, because ultimately, it's like, Jay-Z released an album, one of his first albums, called Reasonable Doubt. And, I keep thinking about Scarface and that classic scene, where, he just got pinched by Cyto Bomb, and, Cyto Bomb got him on camera, washing dollars, so to speak. He's, Scarface has 100, I want to say, I don't even know the amount, offhand, that Scarface had, that he got caught with by Cyto Bomb. But, Scarface gets caught by Cyto Bomb, washing dollars, laundering money. Okay. And, so he hires a lawyer, who, the famous classic line, he says, man, he said, when it comes to, posing a reasonable or creating a reasonable doubt, he said, I'm an expert, but when you got a million staring at a camera, it's kind of hard to convince the jury that you found it in a taxi cab. Okay. So, that scene is what I think about, as I'm, watching the prosecution, okay, make its case against this officer, who murdered George Floyd. Okay, let's be clear here. Okay, this man, had his knee on George Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes. Okay, according to the testimony, it was over 9 minutes. He had his knee on his neck. So we're talking about nearly 10 minutes. I don't think people can hold their breath longer than 6. Okay, I don't know what the world record is for the person holding their breath, but this man's knee and the full weight of his body is being pressed upon George Floyd's neck, or so I am assuming that his full weight. I don't know too many people that, can, kneel down and regulate the pressure that they're giving one from their knee, especially when his hands are not like, being supported by the ground or something. I'm assuming he has the full weight of his knee and body on George Floyd's neck, who is saying he can't breathe. Okay, for over 9 minutes. Several of those minutes where this man is completely like motionless. Okay, there are other officers who are holding him down as well. And, my thought is, and don't get me wrong, it's like you got a defense attorney, and I don't, fault defense attorneys for trying their hardest to make a case for their client. Okay. And this officer in the court of law in America has every right to make his claim. And his claim is that, there was drugs inside of George Floyd's system that, was a catalyst towards him dying in that moment. And, literally, I don't care what was in his body. I don't care if he had just got finished doing, 5 lines of coke or smoking some crystal meth or whatever he was doing. Okay, you got your knee on someone's neck for 9 minutes, plus he's dying. We could just wrap that up right there. The neat little bow, he's dying. Okay, so, I'm trying to wrap my head around the logic of the prosecution in, spending so much of its time talking about George Floyd's drug, quote unquote, addiction. Okay, alleged drug addiction. I don't, it's like, the defense is going to do what it can to pose a reasonable doubt. Is it reasonable to say that, George Floyd had so much drugs in his system that, when he was being held and, the knee was on his neck, the drugs, damaged his system in that moment so much that he overdosed. Okay. Is that reasonable to say? I don't care if that's reasonable to say. Let's be honest. Let's be clear here. And if I were handling the prosecution, the fact that the prosecution took that bait, okay, that's a defense attorney's job. The defense attorney's job is to try to create that doubt. Okay, so, the prosecution, in my view, has to be the hammer. The hammer is, listen, dude, you put your knee in this man's neck for over 9 minutes. What in your psychology has, put you in a position to do that? Like, that takes a very special kind of, person, and I don't say special in the positive sense. That takes a very special kind of person to disregard human life to the extent where you can put your knee in someone's neck while they're laying prostrate on the ground or they're laying flat out on the ground and they're begging for their life. This man called for his mother. Okay? This man called for his mother. I just talking about it, my blood is boiling. My blood's boiling. I'm ready to cry. I'm so mad and so angry. I can't even watch that image. I can't even watch that man. I can't look at, because I'm not a violent man. I'm not. I'm a very peaceful, loving person. Okay, I love people. I'm happy with life. God blessed us with this life. I'm enjoying it. Okay, for better or for worse, whatever the circumstance or conditions. And I genuinely want to see people doing well. Okay, as a humanist. So to see and watch this man, no matter what his circumstances were. Okay, he's a human being, and to watch a human being be choked out in such a fashion, there's a rage that is going through that officer's spirit. There's a rage there that has to be pulled out. And the only way to pull that out is through the prosecution. They're spending so much time focusing on George Floyd and his drug addiction, quote unquote, that don't have shit to do with this man putting his knee on his neck for 9 fucking minutes. Excuse my language, I'm sorry. But this is one angry black Republican today. Okay? This is one angry black Republican today. That man had his knee on his neck for 9 minutes. Plus. That man begged for his life. That man called for his mother. That grown man called for his mother. Wow. Every time I think about it, I'm outraged. I'm outraged. And that's what the prosecution should be doing. Making the jury feel that same outrage. That man called for his mother. That man, as he lay dying, called for his mother. It takes a wicked person to do that. It takes a wicked person to, and I'm not talking, excuse me, it takes a wicked person to continue to choke someone out that is completely begging for mercy. That man showed no mercy as he had his knee on his neck for 9 minutes plus. He showed no mercy. None. What kind of man shows no mercy? What kind of man has that kind of vitriol in his spirit that he could choke somebody out? I don't care if they're black, white, Asian. What type of man does that? We just experienced some black man beating up, kicking in some Asian woman. And my heart goes out to that Asian woman. It really does. But that black man killed his mother. He killed his own mother in 2002. He was on parole for life for murdering his own mother. That's the kind of man that could put his knee on somebody's neck for 9 minutes. So it's no brainer that he kicked out an Asian woman. And I feel sorry for that Asian woman and her family. And that black man that did that should go to prison for the rest of his life. He should. He probably shouldn't have been out of prison anyway. Murdering his mother. That is a crime. That is an unforgivable crime. To murder your mother. Your mother gave you life. Thank you, Ma, for giving me life. I can never, ever disrespect her. Ever. I could never disrespect my mother. I don't care what she does in this lifetime. I'm riding with her to the end. Period. That's my mother. That's my mother. She earned that. Period. My family feel the same way. The same way. There are very few people that that can provoke me to rage. Okay? Not very few people. There are very few individuals that if something happened to them, I'm enraged completely. And I'm not going to be responsible for what I do. That's my mother, my brother, my sister, my kids, my nieces, my nephews. There's some people on this earth you violate, it's a time to kill. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Things will never be the same. That's just the way it is. And for black people, wow, for black people, I'm ready for revolution. Because, George Floyd, see, first of all, let's be honest. This cop was not working, in a vacuum. Let's say that. Let me say that from the grip. I don't believe this cop was doing that. I believe that cop was that cop is your Lee Harvey Oswald. That's who that cop is. That cop is Lee Harvey Oswald. Lee Harvey Oswald, all Lee Harvey Oswald had to do was be in position. Because that's how easy it is to commit, well, I'm not going to say it's easy, but, if you want to murder someone, the Godfather said this and, Michael Corleone said this, when they were, figuring out how to hit Hyman Roth. Okay. He said history has taught us that anybody could be killed. Anyone can be killed. Okay. An American president was knocked off in broad daylight in a motorcade with millions of people around. John F. Kennedy, that happened. Knocked off with millions of people around. A sitting president. It's like, come on, a sitting president was murdered in broad daylight. Anybody could be hit. Anybody could be killed. Okay? So, all Lee Harvey Oswald had to do was be in position. Okay? All the other, even if he didn't pull the trigger, even if somebody on the grassy knoll pulled the trigger and popped, President Kennedy, Harvey Oswald was the patsy. He was going to be a patsy anyway. He had the skill. So as long as there is, quote unquote evidence to support those theories that arose, that's why Lee Harvey Oswald, took the fall. So this particular cop who murdered George Floyd, all right, there's a, America and the world is in the middle of a paradigm shift. In the middle of a paradigm shift. There is a weapon of mass destruction at play right now. Basically, if I don't care, President Trump spent a lot of time nurturing the idea that this was the China virus. He did. Okay. I've heard that phrase. I heard that phrase first used by President Trump. China virus, China virus, China virus. This virus originated in, a province in China and spread across the globe. All right. A manufactured, virus, COVID-19. You know what I'm saying? I'm thinking about where COVID-18 was and COVID-17 and COVID-16. COVID-19 released, okay, out of some lab. Okay, how it did. It reminded us of those movies like Outbreak. Any one of those movies that, dealt with these pathogens that, swept through societies and, caused all type of infestations that killed a lot of people. This monster, took out thousands of black people in America. All right. Black people in America have been suffering this kind of tragedy since we got here in this culture and since we got to America. Okay. Since we got here. So to put this all in perspective. Okay. When George Floyd is being murdered, okay, the ease by which you look at this man's face, and I'm talking about the cop who murdered him, in the wake of all of these black people dying and, on the cusp of rioting, coming out of the black community, it's safe to assume or argue that, there's this conspiracy to destroy black people or to get rid of black people. Okay. We could make an argument. Okay. Blacks in this country. So, you got all these other groups in America that are mounting up weapons and weaponry. If there is some plot to take out black people on an extermination level, on an extinction level in America, wouldn't this be the right time to do it? And then if you could justify it by provoking black people to rage so that we start this premature assault on anyone in this country, man, if this military was to unleash the Kraken, black people don't stand a chance. Okay, on at least on paper. If you're a war buff and you read books like The Art of War, we're talking about a population that is unprepared for war. It'd be like that movie in, when all those soldiers, there was a group of soldiers that was sitting on the top of, it was the rules of engagement. Okay. And, Samuel L. Jackson was in charge of a group of soldiers, and they're on the top of this building in Yemen, and all of the crowd, they're screaming and yelling, ready to protest. They're throwing bottles all of the building. You know what I'm saying? There are people in the crowd that are firing up at the soldiers. And then eventually, these soldiers who have been holding themselves back. Just a few holding themselves back. Man, when Samuel L. Jackson gives the order after he sees some of those people in the crowd firing, man, as soon as he opened up the cracking and he yelled fire, man, they took that crowd, the entire crowd out in a matter of minutes. Or what about Kasimoto, one of my favorite characters in all the film? Kasimoto in The Last Samurai. When they were in the woods and they attacked those soldiers the first time, they took them out using the ancient art of swordsmanship. But when they came back after those, Chinese, that military got themselves together and they got those howitzer guns, man, Kasimoto on an open field tried to run down again and they took them all out. That's the power of the American military. You let that military sweep through the hood or the black community. And they open up the crack and they're taking people out in mass. So no, our people ain't ready for no revolution. We ain't ready for that. We ain't got the understanding. We ain't got the sophistication. We ain't got the not the intelligence, excuse me. We don't have the theories. Okay, you need operating theories and a science. There's a science to war. We're not ready for that. It's like, something, who's it? Lisa Durden said, where all these tough gangbangers at? When white people are assaulting black people in their communities, where all these tough gangbangers at? They ain't thinking that they're not politically conscious enough. They're not politically conscious enough to talk about, moving towards any action that would foster the idea of revolution. They don't have that consciousness. They're capitalists at the end of the day. They're capitalists, period. That's like expecting a group of black teachers to pick up arms in America, or doctors, or anyone in the black bourgeoisie. You think the black bourgeoisie is more capitalist than those gangbangers? You think they're gonna give their lives up for revolution? Some may, but it takes a special kind of person to die for the people, to sacrifice their lives for the people. It takes a special kind of person to do that. You know what I'm saying? So, we got to stop moving off these false syllogisms. I don't expect gangbangers to be that politically conscious, although some may be. Okay, that culture of individualism and tribalism and violence, that culture won't allow, for the humane paradigm shift that would lead us towards the idea of revolution. Okay. But, I don't want to get too sidetracked. I want to stick to the topic here, the George Floyd trial and its implications moving forward on an America that is highly divided. We need that higher order morality today. Those prosecutors are making a grave misstep as far as I'm concerned. One, they put George Floyd's girlfriend on the stand who talked about their drug addiction. You see, I don't care if the drugs are prescription. All they hear is drug abuse. And then you see this black man, and they introduce one of his dealers. Okay, anybody know anything about drugs in the black community know that if you a drug addict, man, you getting drugs wherever you can get them at. Okay, you need drugs, man, I don't care, you getting them drugs anywhere. You know what I'm saying? So, the prosecution, quote unquote, playing chess, knowing that the defense is going to try to create a reasonable doubt. using his drug abuse. That shit don't matter. And that's the point I'm going for. That shit don't matter. That man had his knee on his neck for 9 minutes. George Floyd isn't on trial here. He's dead. That cop who killed him is on trial. That's where the focus should be at. Not on George Floyd's drug addiction. Fuck his drug addiction. I want to focus on the mean-ass attitude. Where the hell did that mean-ass attitude come from? Why ain't we delving into that man's history? Why ain't we looking at his father or his mother and what kind of fucking father he had? Or what kind of goddamn mother he had? And how the hell they raise a child so goddamn dysregulated and so goddamn disrespectful and so goddamn inhumane that he could kneel on some man's neck for 9+ fucking minutes and choke the life out of that man. Where the fuck did that come from? That's what I want to look at. Why ain't we interviewing his high school buddies? Somebody got to have seen that behavior. And if he only was around racists, then bring some of them on trial and watch them, justify his behavior. Because then that tells a lot as well. That's where the prosecution should be focusing on. This cop. Where did he go to school at? Was there a Klan branch in his, community? Who was he working for? What bigger plot could be going on that, somebody came to him and said, you're going to be our Lee Harvey Oswald. We want a race war. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to murder this black man on 9 minutes, catch it on camera. Because that's going to piss those black people off and they're going to go to war and we're going to take them out. Fuck the defense attorney's reasonable doubt. I don't care about them. And if the prosecution would have focused there and kept all their attention there, man, and then they acquit. You see, I'm going to keep it funky with you. I ain't with that rioting shit today. Not today. Not after going through civil rights. Not after going through Black Power and the Panthers. You see, I ain't with that, riot shit. I ain't with that. Fuck a riot. On a Black Wall Street. That's what we should be doing. Making sure our kids are registered to go to school. Put these goddamn drugs down. Put all this capitalist shit down. Start buying up houses and making sure that people got places to stay. Co-ops. Put money in people's pocket. Registering black people for school. Fixing their credit. Upgrading ourselves. Upgrading our humanism. Get back in church and the mosque. Working out. Getting ourselves right. This is what George Floyd should be doing. His legacy. That killing. Bringing us to alertness. DEFCON 5. We in DEFCON 5. That's what we should be doing. Getting ourselves ready. Men in prison writing to their sons and their daughters, trying to rebuild and reconnect. Mothers focusing on making sure that these babies respect their fathers. Laying in the bed you made. Talk about us playing. All these niggas do look forward to sundress season. So we can keep fueling our lust. Or the next Lil Nas X Demon song. Or the next Cardi B track. We got to upgrade. We are underdeveloping socially. 'Cause Sister Soldier said the amount of disorder in the black community that keeps these other communities rich is extraordinary. So I don't want to burn down nothing. I want to build a new nation. Focusing on this man's drug addiction. So what? He was a drug addict. So what? Man called for his mother while he was being murdered in the street like a dog. And they treat dogs better than that. And I don't think that man was acting in, I think he was acting in concert. He was not acting unilaterally. We got to stop being so easy to bait. That what happened to Sonny and the Godfather? Baited his ass easy, getting all his emotions. Negro slap his his sister up, and he go murder, and he go running out to beat him up. Just hop in the car, hot-headed Sonny. Took his ass out. They took his ass out. That's all they doing to us. It is horrible that in 2021, after the civil rights movement, after Dr. King, after Malcolm, after Dr. John Henry Clark, and all these warriors we had in our culture, it is horrible that these people still treat us the way they do. That's horrible. That says a lot about them. What is it in their character? What is it in their psychosis or their psychology that creates the kind of people that can continue this kind of rage against our people? That's what we need to be figuring out. And that's what them prosecutors could be doing by delving into that man's psychology and what created him. You see, because I'd rather have George Floyd's drug addiction than to have whatever the fuck is in his spirit and his head that could make him do that. I'd rather deal with George Floyd's drug addiction than to deal with that. And that's the God's honest truth. And I don't give a shit what that life came with. He could be a king of the earth, officer, riding around the community all day long, making money, doing him. He could be a king of the earth. I would not want that life. I'd rather be the drug addict George Floyd than to be that person. And that's the God's honest truth. That's the God's honest truth. It reminds me of that woman that I met in South Africa. We sat in a Cape Town bar, sipping Savannas. And that woman had gotten a full scholarship to go to Howard University. And I asked her, I was so excited for her, thinking she was going to come to America and get her degree. And that woman said to me, she said, man, I would rather live on the squatter camp my mother came from, as opposed than to go to America and lose myself in that place. That's what she said to me. And I couldn't understand what she was mean, why she would say that. But I damn sure understand now. There's a wickedness in this nation that has got to be eradicated. And that wickedness veered its ugly head in the George Floyd situation. How many Americans feel like George Floyd? And that's why, I said George Floyd already changed the world. Because, when he died, I was Uber driving on one block in Maplewood, and every single one of those houses had a Black Lives Matter sign on the lawn. I was so excited watching the level of people, white, Asian, Black, Spanish, Indian, step up for Black lives. Because that's what it did. It launched almost a consolidation of ideology. Ideas were consolidated around Black Lives Matter. Ideas were consolidated. People got into activism that may never have been into activism. I even got to give props to Cardi B, who pushed the Tamika Mallory situation to the point where her mom came and gave her the award for Woman of the Year. I don't think that negates the, the selling of, debauchery to our young girls. I don't agree there, but it's still a step in the right direction. And George Floyd and Tamika Mallory helped propel that. And many different people in America who don't have that shit that cop was made of. And I don't even want to say his name and give him any goddamn recognition because he's the same face of every single one of those racists who think it not robbery to subject people to their ignorance. We don't have to buy that shit. We don't have to buy that. And if that's what's being bred in those communities, you can keep those places. We want to root you out. We want to root your thinking out. Period. So no, I don't believe the prosecution should be wasting any time. Not one iota of time going after this understanding of why George Floyd used drugs. 90+% of Americans use drugs. Let's throw that goddamn shit, that argument out the window. You got CEOs of companies using drugs. Period. You have healthcare professionals using drugs. You got educators using drugs. You got drug use all throughout our society. And so many people have shown us that drug addiction and drug use don't mean shit. Don't mean shit. It is time to get that shit out of our space. So what? People are using drugs. So the fuck what? Judges use fucking drugs. Lawyers use fucking drugs. People that have multiple people's lives. Sully used was it Sully? Which one of them goddamn a flight? Denzel Washington, one of them goddamn pilots was getting drunk, using drugs. All kind of people use fucking drugs, and that shit don't matter. So I don't give a shit about George Floyd's drug use. And spending any time on it is egregious. Is egregious. We don't need to talk about that. Let's talk about what made that racist the way he is. Because he had his knee on George Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes. That man called out for his mother while he lay dying under the weight of that man's knee. And that man showed no fucking mercy at all. That's what this is about. And it launched an empathy to the black community that has never been seen on a world level the way it has in this case. So he changed the world already. And if he don't get no justice in the court, if that reasonable doubt shit wins the day and that officer is able to go home, then so be it. So be it. God said vengeance is mine because I don't want my people reacting. I don't want my people. We've done enough damage to ourselves in the wake of all this madness that I don't care to rekindle. I want to rebuild our character. Let's start with rebuilding our character because in the end, character matters. Character matters. I watched some people fall to the streets in their lives and now are pillars in the community. I watch people fall to the streets in our community and now are pillars in the community. Some of my favorite people on earth are pillars in the community. You know why? Because they fell and they get up every single day. They go to work. They punch that clock like the rest of us. I don't care what you do. I don't care what your role is. If you get up and you contribute to the wheel of righteous America, the righteous nation that we can be, even if we aren't holding true to that value, and you participate, that's what makes you a hero. We got to elevate the heroes now. George Floyd earned his wings in the hereafter. I don't care what he did on earth. Okay, his life was the sacrificial lamb, the scapegoat. We're going to put all of our drug addiction, all of our inhumanity, all of our flaws and problems socially, we're going to put them right in George Floyd's spirit. And we're going to pray that he takes all of that up to God and asks God for all of our forgiveness. So we're going to use George Floyd's life as a catalyst, as a catapult to reversing the trends of underdevelopment, social underdevelopment that have plagued the black community. This is one angry black Republican signing out. Peace, my people.